Yeah, good morning, everybody. So, I'd like to spend about 30-40 minutes taking you through the policy deployment process. And this is something I learned nearly 20 years ago from Toyota and Nissan when my company started supplying mirrors and components and seat belts to the new plants that Toyota and Nissan were setting up back in the late 80s and early 90s. And since then, we've continued to learn and refine it to be practical and concise. So what I'd like to take you through, a few comments on strategy development. But policy deployment is all about executing the strategy, and that's where I'll focus the time on. I'll explain the policy deployment process, which would normally run over a number of weeks in a business. I'm going to try and condense it into 40 minutes, so please bear with me. And I'll finish on a case study of an Australian company called Boral that will explain and in a little bit more detail the stuff I'm going to go through. So first of all, what's strategy all about? There's volumes and books on the subject, but cutting to the chase, strategy explains how an organisation faced with competition will achieve superior performance. And it should answer the questions: what value will the organisation create? How will the organisation offer a unique product or service to customers? Something that can't easily be copied. Because lots of stuff we're talking about is quite easily copied. What's the unique selling point that comes forward in a strategy? Lots of brilliant strategies. Many of them fail. Why do so many fail? As we go around companies, as we ask that question, we get the normal answers of things like the IT systems are rubbish, or forecasting is never accurate enough, or project management capabilities and competencies and skills are missing. But as you delve into that and ask why 5 times, you invariably confirm the research that we see time and time again, that people cannot implement what they do not know. People do not implement properly what they do not understand. People do not implement what they are not committed to. And management overlook the importance of the hows of executing strategy. So we've got the hows and we've got the whats. The whats is the strategy, the unique selling point. The hows is, well, this is all fine and dandy. How the hell are we going to do it? And people give up on strategy, the implications of which have not been thought or anticipated. For example, so often I've heard comments like, well, we didn't realise that doing all this lean stuff and implementing pull systems would affect our EBIT, which is what our executive bonus is based on. So we sort of tumble back round the wheel again. Sounds pretty obvious, but it happens all the time. Our policy deployment process will help management identify and practically manage the implementation of the strategy, the culture, the products of the business. So what's all this stuff got to do with lean? Well, the key to success, as Dan was saying, is to focus on doing the right things and getting the right results. Problems in operations invariably originate in other functional areas, but they show themselves where we're actually trying to make things, create things, change things. This equally applies in any process, in any industry where there is a customer. There's a customer, there's a process delivering it, and our policy deployment process is applicable. And there are so many things to do in organisations that we need to deselect some very worthy initiatives, things that maybe we've been doing because they've always been done or someone wants certain reports. We really need to take the brave pills with this stuff and start to challenge the things that are being done. Because of limited resources, you can only do so much. The smart world-class businesses are identifying what are the critical things, and that's where our resources are going to go. The rest will have to wait. So how do we deselect some of those issues? It starts with correctly identifying those critical business issues. Then it's all about developing the plan to execute. And policy deployment's all about keeping focus on the real prize, creating value for customers, and all the lean tools are means to this end and not ends in themselves. I think the point was made earlier on there. And lean must be supported from the top of the organisation. When it's not, as you folks know, I'm sure, things can get very, very difficult. So our policy deployment directs people to what they should do rather than what they maybe want to do. And sometimes there's quite a disconnect. There's the true north that we're trying to take the business. There's the magnetic north that takes into account all the vagaries of ambitions and Machiavellian tactics and politics that go on. What we're trying to do is to align those effects. Now, this stuff is really, really difficult. I think this is probably the most toughest activity. Why? Well, it's dealing with a multitude of complex issues. And it addresses the many conflicting goals that can arise between functions. It puts people and culture centre stage. The difficult things that sometimes we try and sort of slide around, they're there in the headlights we need to deal with. However, once mastered, the benefits are significant. It aligns people and actions to the true North Star. That's where our strategic direction has been defined. That's where we're going to take everybody to. It generates synergies via teamwork. And it helps every part of the organisation understand its effect on the other parts of the organisation, which sounds fairly obvious again, but in so many organisations we've got different priorities, different incentives. And the cross-functional learning is fast-tracked as we really start to get the energies and the synergies running through these departments. And it builds confidence in the plan, knowing that every facet has been empirically considered. We've thought about this, we've challenged it, we've gone through the detail, we're comfortable we can present our case to the CEO, we've thought it through and considered every option. And it identifies and prioritises the business critical issues and deselects the unimportant. Okay, so let me just run through now the process. What is it all about? Well, to support the achievement of the business strategy through the alignment of all employees, functions, and divisions to the business goals. To execute the strategic plan, identifying and focusing on the business critical issues and deselecting the non-essential. To achieve ownership, focus, direction and commitment through the involvement of everyone. I'll talk about commitment and involvement, pretty key to this whole process. And the foundation stone is the Deming PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, or Plan, Do, Check, Adjust. Okay, the process starts by consideration of the whole value stream. And we assemble all the functional heads or directors that can influence the performance of the business. And this must include all of those, the sales and marketing, engineering, contract, design, development, manufacturing. I mean, so often with these sessions, and sales and marketing people are great for this, they kind of think, well, I've got more important things to do, I've got to go and see a customer or do whatever. We will insist that group are in the room together. So necessary to understand that full value stream. And the first analysis is focused entirely on what the customer really, really wants, which may be different to what we think he wants. And the cross-functional discussion can get quite interested in that regard, because what the customer wants is a solution to a problem. Does a water company want a pump? Well, no, not really. What it wants is a volume of liquid in area A moved to area B. And by the way, if you can tell him how much he's lost along the way and provide the technology to provide that information, he'll be absolutely delighted. Does a building construction company want a pile of bricks? Well, no, not really. What they want is a load-bearing surface or a flat surface or a partition or a fireproof. So we have that discussion, and the value of this stuff is in having that discussion. Not necessarily that we end up with some nice flip charts and bits and pieces on the wall. It's the value of that discussion. And we must insist on reality. These discussions can get quite difficult, but this is facing reality. We need to get all this stuff on the table. It's only when it's on the table we can start to deal with it. Pictorially, this is effectively what we're doing. So often in businesses, we've got functions, departments, pulling in various directions, working hard to achieve their departmental goals. Different priorities, different incentives. Through the policy deployment process, our challenge is to align all those functions. So now people are working hard to achieve business goals as opposed to departmental goals. And typically, this is the way stuff is cascaded down. We've got the vision and values, mission statements, with stuff that goes on at executive level. We develop a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan. That'll get pushed down the organisation. The subtlety of policy deployment is what we show here, the arrows coming back up, which is what we call the catchball discussion. And purposely, these arrows and the vortex are larger than those going down, because this is the subtle difference of this process. We're going to take time, we're going to question, we're going to ask, we're going to listen. Have we got this right? If we haven't, let's go back and rethink it. So it's respecting that the people that really know this best are the people actually doing the job. And if we kind of listen to them, we're going to get our plans a whole lot smarter. So if we look at the big picture, I use this strategy, this analogy. I like this analogy because it explains exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to craft and shape the plans at each level to fit exactly, with nothing left out. The Russian doll kind of syndrome analogy kind of fits that well. So again, we've got these plans cascading down from corporate right through to, in world-class businesses, to individuals, so we see the linkage of their PDP to their personal development plan back through to the objectives in our master plan. And again, the arrows coming back are the critical catchball. So taking that alignment of the Russian dolls, ensuring that these things are aligned, but also applying clear accountability for people to operate, but within the framework of a box or a Russian doll. That's kind of the critical analysis that's going on. By doing that, by that involvement, by those arrows coming back up, we develop the commitment through involvement. We've asked, we haven't just told, we've asked these folks, we've respected that they know what they're talking about. So what's the difference between being involved and being committed? I just kind of like playing around with this, so I'll share it with you. Well, think of a nice breakfast of eggs and bacon. I'm sure a few of you had a nice breakfast of eggs and bacon this morning. There's the chicken, there's the nice little piggy. You can see where this is going, can't you? It's the chicken is involved, but the pig's committed. This is it, you know, this is the passion, this is the commitment that we need to get. And the leadership, the courage to move this stuff forward is absolutely critical. So in our process, in our teamwork activities, we have the individuals, the cross-functional team, now look at the most admired companies. Try Googling that, most admired companies, see what comes up. We're purposely doing this to get people to start to think outside of their own industry and to start thinking about what world-class processes may look like, not necessarily what world-class products might look like. there's quite a subtle difference. So as we go through this stuff and get the team thinking, talking, challenging, again, cross-functional learning is accelerated here. But if we can look outside our industry and understand the things that are going on, we can fast-track our improvement process. I'll give an example from my automotive days. We had a real problem when I was MD at Britax. One of the big problems we had was our labelling errors, which was causing problems for inline vehicle sequencing. For those of you that know automotive, know that contrary to popular belief, every one of those cars coming down the track is different. And we're supplying components that have to go with a specific car. If you get one of those wrong, the whole thing's wrong, and you're in serious trouble. So we went to benchmark a drugs company to look at their process and see how they can guarantee that the labelling is right, because that's really a matter of life and death, isn't it? So that was a good analysis for us to see how that process really works. You can't afford to get it wrong. You can't afford to get your paracetamols mixed up with your Viagra, so they tell me. So we kind of learnt from that by effectively benchmarking, getting the team thinking, challenging, and asking. So as we go through that assessment in our own industry and outside of our industry, we develop the thinking of KPIs. What do those great companies do? What do they measure? How do they achieve it? And what actual measurements, what KPI measurements do they actually achieve? We need to start to understand what good looks like. So often, if you're just operating within your own department or your own company even, you're blinkered. You've got to get up above the long grass and really scan around. So having done that, we then have the team work on this pretty standard stuff really, but we're following a process. The long-term plan wall chart. So we'll have the team list down, the left-hand side there, the improvement measure. What are the important things in our business? What are the critical things in our business that we need to be measuring? What does world-class look like? What does best-in-class look like? We'll list down the criteria. On the right-hand side of this chart, we'll list down what world-class or best-in-class looks like. And next to that, we'll have the discussion to say, okay, so what could we be achieving in this business in maybe 3 or 5 years' time? Typically 5 years, although with the volatility of life these days, we're seeing most businesses coming down probably 5 years. Let's figure out 3 years is probably where that's moving to. Having said that, in some businesses that we've had discussions with, because of capital investment, if you sign capital investment off now, you're not going to see anything for 5 years anyway. So we flex that to reflect the business. And then we fill in those KPIs. We're currently here, we want to get to here. Let's kind of start to think how quickly or what are the steps that we need to take to get us there. Okay? Just nice and logical, nothing rocket science. Quite often at this point, there's a danger that we're thinking of just too many KPIs, and I'll say a little bit about that later. But the smart companies are figuring out just those critical KPIs that they need to have on their dashboard that takes them where they need to be. I'll say a little bit more about that a bit later. So from that stage, we then move on to complete a gap statement. Again, good basic management. So we're listing down here, we're just carrying across the criteria, the metrics, the KPIs that we believe are absolutely important to our business. We're listing down where we now want to be 1 year on into our 5-year or 3-year plan. So this is now, we're going to start to think, well, that's fine. So this is the first year. This is going to develop into our first year objectives. What do we start to need to do to close those gaps? And if you have that discussion cross-functionally, we'll just start to fill in some gap statements. well, if we really want to do this, if we're serious about this, these are the sorts of things we need to do. And there's some examples there. I won't go through them, but I'm sure you've got the picture. But we're going through a disciplined process. We're not going to jump from A to C. We're going to make sure we do B in the middle. Okay? So when determining those gap statements, we'll be asking, challenging such questions as, what is the gap? What are we trying to improve? What is preventing us from meeting our target? What are the things that are standing in the way? This is where we get into these catchball discussions that I'll come back to in a little bit. And what are the root causes in order of importance? So those sorts of discussions go on to formulate those gap statements. So now we're ready to start to think about how we can sort of formulate that into a set of objectives. And we take soundings from these 6 boxes. I call it the 6-box analysis. The results of our catchball discussions and questions, and I'll show you some examples of that in a short moment, come around and we take soundings from the team from these 6 boxes. What is the feedback from our customers? Let's list them down. Let's really capture. Now, face reality. Invariably, we all start off saying the nice things, but you know, let's be truthful with this. Let's cut through the nonsense. Let's get reality on the table. Okay. We'll go through the strategic issues from the long-term plan. What are corporate telling us? What is what are we seeing in annual accounts? Depending on where you start this kind of policy deployment stuff, but we need to take soundings, because we're going to make sure our stuff is aligned to that. Okay? The management feedback, what are our management telling us? What are the comments? What are the constructive points? What are the criticisms? You know, they're all spending a lot of time at work. They're all taking this stuff very seriously. We need to listen to it. The carried over objectives, what are the objectives that we're working on from last year? How far advanced are we? What are we doing? What have we stopped doing them? What should we stop? What should we start doing? What should we continue doing? Those kind of discussions. The feedback from the workforce, absolutely essential. Normally this box gets kind of left out somewhere. But the Gembas, go to Gemba, show respect and ask why, from Dan's presentation. All this stuff is vitally important. We're respecting those people know it best. We don't anymore. Life's too complex. What we should be is smart managers and not smart sort of engineers or trying to do jobs for them. So we'll take soundings from those boxes, and I'll show you kind of how that looks like as we go through that in a short while. We then take that thinking down through the divisions or departments. We take it through through functions. And in some world-class businesses, we take that right down to individual objectives. Okay? And the process will ensure that we're starting to align all those arrows I showed earlier on. So a little bit more about catchball questions. So these arrows coming back up over a period of a number of weeks, if management are doing what they should be doing at the time we're kind of going through our PD annual process, or Hoshin as it's sometimes referred to, then we're collecting and asking a raft of questions. And there's no holds barred with this stuff. Let me give you some examples of the kind of things that we may be asking through those catchball discussions. Are we facing reality? What are the critical issues facing the business? You know, we need to listen to everybody's kind of opinion on that. Do we understand what our customers really, really want, internal and external? You know, we focus very much in the discussion on the external customers. In departments and functions, we've got these internal customers. The same principle applies. Understand what they want. Understand the value stream that's going to deliver it. Ensure the process is going to flow. Pull what's required at the rate it's required. And keep trying to improve it. We need to double our stock turns. What do we need to do? How can we do it? What help do you want? You know, and invariably we get the comments back, well, if you kidding? If you really want us to move stock turns from 5 to 10, then I'm going to need this, or I'm going to need some training here. And they're the things over the process that we need to understand. Do we have the best suppliers? Do we have too many suppliers? How do we improve them? Supplier issues in most businesses it continues to be a big issue. Do we have the best people? Are they suitably rewarded? Do you understand the plant objectives and what you are working on to help achieve them? That's a very incisive question. Tells us a hell of a lot. You just go anywhere and just ask that question. Say no more and see what the response is. You quickly figure out how far down this lean journey you are just with that one question. What are you working on? How does that relate to the stuff that we're trying to do for our corporate objectives? What keeps you awake at night? Work-related, of course. Then we kind of get into, if you travel at the speed of light, do your headlights work? How do you know when you're out in visual link? We start to have a bit of fun with that. The point is, the only daft questions are the ones that don't get asked. There's no holds barred here. Everybody's learning through the piece. So as we go through those questions, through our PD process, we'll start to list out the issues that have arisen from this stuff, from the 6-box exercise, and that will start to look something like this. We've got all these issues that are there. We're facing reality. We're listening. We're putting them up there. And of course there'll be some nonsense stuff in there. Of course they will. That's life, but the smart management sifting that out and figuring out how to deal with it. And typically that exercise runs into something like this. There are a whole host of issues. But as we then stand back from that, as we eliminate, reduce and combine all that noise, all that feedback, they start to drop into themes. And the louder that theme becomes because of the more response there's been to it, it gravitates up our kind of list of issues to deal with. And they would naturally drop into themes. Some examples there: safety, people, environment, quality, cost, delivery. Different for every business, but this fairly simple process starts to help you see what the issues should really be. So then we start to articulate some statements. Once we've got those themes, and there'll probably be 4, 5, 6, maximum 7. Maximum 7. Because if you're not careful, you're then into sub-level stuff that you're trying to, cover everything. Just bring it to the top level. Here we are running this company. These are the 4, 5, 6 or 7 key issues in our first year that are going to morph into our objectives. And as we articulate each of those themes with a short statement, started with a verb or a verb in the middle, we don't want to get it too convoluted, short and sweet and to the point, it might start to look something like this. Work safely. Then we've, in this company, they've put some little strap lines to it. Now you may think, well, hold on, this is a bit bloody obvious, isn't it? We could have got to this in square one. The subtlety here is the cross-functional team have been involved in the discussion, have had their say, have been listened to, and they've formulated it. Not on high, cascading down. So this is the arrows coming back. This is remember the pig and the chicken? This is getting the commitment through the involvement. They're owning it. It's not cascaded. I'll stress that point because it's absolutely key to this. Busy execs and, having been there, I kind of understand it. You think, oh, look, let's cut the nonsense. Let's cut to the chase. This is the bit we're doing. You need to exercise a bit of patience. I kind of learnt through the piece. Now, okay, they're fine words. It starts to focus on our head-up display on our dashboard, the key things and the objectives. But they're not objectives until they meet the SMART criteria. I'm sure you're familiar with those. But this is pretty important. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-related. So we're going to put metrics against those objectives. We're going to make sure they're specific. And the way to really think about that is if this has cascaded down to individuals and now you're giving someone their annual performance appraisal that maybe the pay and rations is decreed by, you've got to be pretty specific. You've got to be pretty clear here. You can't leave this stuff vague. And this is why it gets difficult. You've got to think it through, and you've got to kind of put your money where your mouth is kind of thing, Tom. So the SMART acronym, pretty damn important. I like to use this analogy, which I'll just explain when we're going through this stuff, because we talk to the senior team, and their mission, the senior team's mission, they're on the bridge of this boat, and their mission is to get the boat to the destination at the right speed, the right direction, without bumping into anything, and without running aground. Now, we want on the dashboard of our bridge just the metrics that are going to achieve that objective. If we want to know what the BMEP of cylinder number 3 is down in the engine room, we can find that out. It'll be a sub-level of these. If we want to know what the oil level is in sump 5, we can find that out. And if they start to go wrong, they will start to affect these. If we try and put too much on the dashboard, which is what most management do, and I certainly used to, you apply a scattergun approach, put everything on there, measure everything, and with a bit of luck we get it right. You never do. Why? Because you get your valuable resources diluted. You're going off like a fire engine at the wrong fire. I'd use the phrase. So it needs a lot of thinking about to make sure you've got the right KPIs and the right metrics just to get you to the destination, the right speed, right direction, not bumping into anything, not running aground. So if you think about things that way, that's what we do in workshops, and it kind of sifts out all this other noise beneath. The other stuff is important, but we've got to make sure it's prioritised. So when we've thought that through, so now we've got a set of objectives, we've got a set of metrics that we're going to measure them by. So the next part of the process is figuring out, well, that's fine. What the hell do we need to do to achieve those objectives? That's the next part of the discussion. So for each objective, we consider how can it be achieved? What actions do we need to take to achieve them? Flushing from that discussion, it emerges that the projects, and there will be many of those projects that emerge at this stage, and we identify those projects required to meet each objective. And of course, some projects will serve 2 or 3 objectives, and vice versa. And then we consider the improvement that each project will make and set quantifiable targets and completion dates. So the SMART acronym effectively needs to go by these projects. A critical part of policy deployment is prioritising those projects, because we'll start off with so many, we need to prioritise them, and those that are down the bottom, we might just be thinking, hey, the resources, the time, the priorities that we have really mean some of these are going to have to wait. We'll have to push some into the next year. And that's where you need to take the brave pills and have courageous leadership that's going to understand this process that deselects the less important. So as we go through those projects, we're asking the questions, what are we trying to improve? What is preventing us from achieving it? What are the causes in order of importance? What actions will address the most important causes? And we go through a simple technique which we call SUGAR, seriousness, urgency and growth. Dead simple, we like the simple things. To start the prioritisation process. So we consider the issue that project is addressing, how serious is it on a scale of 1 to 10? Consensus of opinion. That's all it takes. If we've got the consensus, we've got the involvement, we've got the commitment. Then we think, how urgent is it? Is this critical? Have we got to fix this today, or can it wait till tomorrow? Or can it wait till the end of the year? And we'd rate that one out, 1 to 10. And then growth. Is the issue that this project is going to address, is that growing, or is it shrinking, or is it staying the same? Quite simple. Rate that 1 to 10. Consensus through the group. If you just add those up, some people prefer to multiply, but why make it complicated? Just add those up, And this stuff starts to gravitate, and you can kind of see the stuff that's at the bottom. Now, first pass round, someone will jump in. We've kind of got that at a low level. That should be, because that generates the discussion, that generates the debate. At the end of this process, we've got a reasonably good prioritised process, a list of projects. It works kind of every time. The value is in the discussion. And typically, that exercise might look something like this. Some of these I've taken from real case exercises. But what we're trying to do here, the way to test these is, we want to go from X to Y by when. So the project metrics, if you think about it that way, yeah, here's a project, and we'll look at a couple of those. But the metric I need is, I'm here, X, I want to go to there, Y, I'm going to do it by when. If you don't get specific about those, it's all very woolly, and people can sort of hide behind everything. This puts everything in the headlights, no hiding place. So some examples of those: roll out the eye care program to all employees. What does that mean? How do we know we've done it? Well, we're going to have 100% employees trained and signed off by October 2013. Bang, that's what we're doing. Not woolly words, not, this is straight to the point. Life's too short, okay? Complete a VSM with the S&OP process, target condition identified by Jill. This is an example where, look, we know this is a problem. It's come through on our analysis. We don't quite know where the impediment is, where the issue is at the moment, so we need to do something to find out more so we can address the problem. And that's an example of where a VSM. Deliver the Lean Action Plan, version 2, all divisions, Lean score, greater than 120 by December 12, OEE, it's overall equipment effectiveness in this case, 85% by September. That's been thought through, it's been committed to cross-functionally. Now we're synergising, we're not just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, we're in this together. Okay, we don't just want a better view of something we're going to hit, we want to make sure we don't hit it, to use my analogy, and so on. So that's a kind of examples of, so now we're ready to start to complete our PD matrix. Now, at first sight, this confuses the hell out of everybody. You look at that and think, Jesus, haven't we got enough to be confused about? But as you start to use this, and I know many of you have, as you start to use this, it becomes quite accepted. People just learn how to read it to navigate, just like the sat-nav on your dashboard. This becomes the company sat-nav or GPS. You've just got one screen in front of you, but the algorithms beneath that are manifold. So it's the same kind of difference, okay? It's a similar thing with A3s, isn't it? When people see A3s first off, you think, oh, it's a bit... But as you start to become accomplished with it, you wonder how you got by without it. So let me just explain how this works. So at the centre of this PD matrix are 4 envelopes. To the left, we've got the company objectives. Remember, work safely that I talked about? We'll list those out, company objectives. The targets against those objectives, so these are the KPIs, these are the metrics, these are the things on our bridge, if you remember. The things that we need, not everything, the things that we need, right speed, right direction, not bumping into anything, not running into the ground. They go down the bottom here, okay? The selected projects that we flushed out, that we just showed, now we've sorted those, we've deselected some, we've agreed, look, this is going to have to wait. We've taken the brave pills, those will have to wait. Because we can say, yeah, look, we're going to do it all. We'll get to the end of the year and we'll fail. So let's, so our selected projects go up there, and the improvement targets, the X to Y by when, go along the right-hand side here, okay? So if we take just a delve into the corner of that matrix, so there's an example of the objectives to the left-hand side, the company targets beneath, and the little crosses show the alignment, show the relationship. And of course, one objective may have several metrics, several KPIs that relate to it. Similarly, several of those KPIs of those metrics may relate to more than one objective. But they're the hard links of those KPIs. There will be some tenuous links. We're kind of not too interested in those. And this doesn't have to be exactly right. This is just, this takes us to where we want to go. So they say with some finance people that they'd rather be exactly right rather than approximately wrong. Well, we're going to turn that around just a little bit. So as we move around, on the right-hand side here, in the orange here, we're now, through the team, going to assign accountabilities, responsibilities. Who's going to lead, who's going to support, and who's going to facilitate? So accountabilities and follow-ups, absolutely essential. So now we're going to put some names in there, cross-functional team. And we'll debate, we'll argue, some will put their hand up, some will be going to the toilet at this point because they don't want the name on the chart. Well, all those things kind of tell you something, I guess. But we will complete the PD matrix. That's our sat-nav. That's where we're going. It's aligned because we've taken the consideration from our 6 boxes. We feel pretty comfortable. We've thrashed through the detail. This is where we're going. So, to recap on that, the objectives in the left-hand envelope relate to the metrics in the bottom envelope. The projects to deliver those objectives relate in the top envelope. The metrics against those projects are in the right-hand envelope, and the accountability is in the right-hand envelope. Okay, that's the way it works. So, that effectively completes the matrix. We will decide, I'll just say a word on deployment leaders. An important part of this stuff is that we develop strong deployment leaders who help develop trust and collaboration across functions. Because now we're going to have people managing projects, traversing functions. That can get somewhat difficult. So to the earlier points, we need to work hard to coach and mentor people here. That's in one company, a display from the manufacturing guy showing his layout. And the personal objectives held by the employees, but the departmental objectives shown on the visual display board. So it's there visually for everybody to see. Just in conclusion, I've got a short video here I'd like to show you, a case study of this stuff in action at a company, big construction company, nearly $5 billion turnover, 15,000 employees, big presence in Asia, America and Australia. And this, just 5 minutes to conclude on, video shows the process in action.
Hi, I'm Markzelway, Chief Executive at Boral, and I've recorded this short message to bring everybody up to speed on policy deployment, which is an important new part of the group's improvement toolbox. I know you're all aware of the significant change program that we've embarked upon, and I'll deal with 4 of these areas to better explain the need for policy deployment and how it draws all of our change initiatives together. First, we're committed to making our business safer, so that nobody working for Boral or on a Boral project gets hurt. Second, the creation of reliable standard systems and processes. This activity is impacting the business in a number of ways. How we receive goods onto our sites, our payroll processes, and the elimination of unnecessary suppliers to give more of that wallet to those that remain. These new processes are designed to create a standard Boral way of operating and should improve our efficiency and attack our waste. Third, we need to be better at both developing new products and getting them to market more quickly. This year we made fantastic progress on our new product innovations in the United States, and we now need to replicate these successes across the balance of Boral. Fourth, the elimination of waste in our processes and our operations. I believe this is at the heart of our ability to compete, and the adoption of lean now forms the foundation stone in our ambition to deliver sector best performance. Where lean principles have been fully embraced, we're already making impressive improvements. But lean is about getting genuine buy-in from the entire workforce, and policy deployment is a proven tool to get the whole organisation all pulling in the same direction. I hope this brief introduction helps to communicate the need for a process which draws all of the activities, improved safety, lean, more efficient accounting, systems improvements, and our sales and marketing initiatives into a single, well-defined plan, so that every member of the organisation can understand their contribution to building Boral into something really great. Thank you.
My name is Laurie West, and I'm rolling out the policy deployment process throughout Boral. Policy deployment is the execution process to deliver the business strategy. And we start by gathering together all the cross-functional people that can influence the site or the plant. And it's absolutely essential that we align all of their activities, all of their objectives to achieve the business goals. So often in businesses, people are working hard in their departments, pulling in various different directions. Policy deployment aligns all of those people to work in the single direction. We'll set aggressive targets against those objectives and working together, defining the projects to deliver those and deselecting the things that don't matter. The business will move forward in the right direction.
There's nothing more exciting than seeing a passionate group of people who are actually willing to work together on a common direction. This policy deployment matrix, I think, has been something missing in our business. So I think we've actually now got a solution for how we engage people in a cascaded set of aligned objectives to take the whole business forward.
This whole process was about turning strategy into action. So, I learnt from that what's important to the business, the Boral, how that cascades through to our division and onto our plasterboard site, and then how I, as the manager of this business, can implement the right sort of activities to ensure that we deliver the outcomes we need as a Boral group.
Over the last 3 days, what I found most valuable was the fact that we were able to bring all departments of Boral Plasterboard, finance, sales, operations and distribution to come up with some measures that suit the business and that we're all working together on the same path.
What the last 3 days has given me is an opportunity for us all to achieve what we need to achieve to still keep the business going at the pace that we need to, and get this lean implemented at the speed we would like to. For me, it's been a very, very positive experience and I've truly appreciated it.
I think the engagement and goodwill that's been involved, the discussions and sometimes the arguments have been well worth having, and they've really, I think, fleshed out some issues that will help take this plant forward and really progress over the next 2 3 years.
The great thing about the people here is they're really up for it. They're engaged, they're interested, they're clearly committed to Pinkenbar and Boral, and I think with the projects that they've flushed out, this is an exciting place to be. So, just in conclusion, let me make a comment on the follow-up procedure. The follow-up reviews are so critical with policy deployment. We've got these plans. The follow-up process, and this is just an example of a review process, green, amber, red, nice and simple. Let's just focus on the greens. I'll be talking a lot more about that later on this afternoon. So, in conclusion, let me just say, in the time allowed, I'm only able to go through the process very quickly. I'm sure it's begging with you a whole load of questions, such things as, well, how do you manage these projects? How do you deal with non-committed bosses? How do you conduct follow-up reviews and at what frequency? What if the process does not start at the very top? Those sorts of discussions we'll be having later on this afternoon in the workshop, but clearly there's a lot of things to follow up on, because as I said right at the start, this is tough, this is difficult, lots of things to solve. So in summary, let me say this is a process, not an event. The key is to develop commitment through involvement, whilst giving people the freedom to make decisions, but within the framework of the box, or a Russian doll in the analogy I used. Aligned to the top level strategy, focused on the important few projects, while having the courage to deselect or defer the less critical.